We do it each and every week with new episodes on Thursday. Make sure you subscribe to Rick Renner's YouTube channel for Texas Sports Hysteria. Joining me now, probably arguably the most beloved coach on the planet, a man that puts the word integrity into the word excellence. He's in so many different Hall of Fames. I don't even have enough time to list them here. Ladies and gentlemen, the one and only Texas A&M Aggie great RC Slocum. Hey, RC, how you doing, buddy?
I'm doing great, Rick. It's good to be on here with you. Good to see you, and hope all is well with you.
Great to see you again. You know, I think about it, and you as the ambassador of Aggie walking around College Station, what's that like? I mean, how many selfies do you take in one day?
Well, I'm so blessed and thankful, really, that I had chances to go other places after A&M, and I really had to go think fast. The morning after I was let go at A&M, Mark White, the former governor, called me, and he was a Baylor graduate. And I said, "Coach, we got to get you up to Baylor." And then Drake McLean called me later that morning from New York. He was on a business trip, and he called me about going to Baylor. I had a call from the AD at the University of Houston. Norv Turner was leaning on me to go to the Raiders with him, and so I had to really fast forward, what I really wanted to do, uh, and there have been other offers after that. But I said, I've spent I had at that time had spent 30 years coaching in A&M. And I had 30 years of players, 30 years of families that I had known and spent time with. And I just said, I can't. Both I had my two sons were already A&M graduates, and I said I just can't switch colors. I've worn maroon for a long, long time, and so I think I'm gonna stay with maroon and just stay here. And now that decision is such a blessing because every day I go to the grocery store, I go to Academy, I go to the golf course, wherever I've got friends, and in a lot of cases, long-term friends. I've got families where I knew the dad and the granddad, and now the kids, and I've got three Aggie granddaughters, got nieces, nephews, whatever, all A&M graduates. So Slocum family looks pretty smart right now. I was the first to go to college in my family, and now we got a whole bunch of smart Slocums out there.
I love it, and it's in your blood. I mean, I'm looking at your office there. It's a complete shrine. We got A&M on the back glass there, and it looks like there's a lifelike kind of cardboard cutout of you in the background. I'm sure a lot of Aggies would love to come into that room and see some of that stuff.
Well, my wife calls it my I love me room. Yes, there's a lot of history in here. One of the things that's meaningful to me, I've got a shoe shine box in here that I had as a kid. And I kept that in my office the whole time I was coaching and told kids, I said, don't tell me about the projects, man. I've lived in the projects. This is my shoe shine boy. I used to spend my afternoons and Saturdays shining shoes. And then I went from that to being a newspaper boy, delivered papers, through papers. And so I've had some of that, and I keep that here. I've got a picture of the barbershop that I shine shoes in. And it just as a reminder of where I came from and how blessed I have been to get to do all the fun things that I've been able to do.
Now, that cardboard cutout, does that ever scare anybody in the family?
Well, it scared my wife the day it showed up. Dave South was a long time guy, worked with my TV show and everything, and he was in some closet or storeroom in A&M and found that cardboard cutout of me, life size. And so one day he comes up to the door and rings the doorbell, and my wife goes in. There's a glass pane you can look through, and she sees this cutout of me standing there on the front porch, and she didn't know what to think, And she opened the door, and Dave got a big kick out of that. We've joked about it many times, but I was
scaring the
standing
heck out of her
in full life, with my coaching gear on, and so she put it in the corner of my office here, put one of my A&M wrecking crew caps on it, and so I get a lot of comments about it, and a lot of the doors are the shape of a football, and my builder was a former player, and he surprised me with that as a gift from him, and it's It's an oval shape, not oval, I guess, but the shape of a football, oblong deal. And it's got TAM on the door handles, so it's got a lot of special things. But I've got memories. I've got one picture in here. I asked people, I said, what's wrong with this picture now? I got the former leader of the free world, President George H.W. Bush. I got the former leader of the Soviet Union, Mikhail Gorbachev. And I got a former shoeshine boy from Orange, Texas. Anyway, it speaks to America. And the president and I talked about that many times, how in America that would be possible for someone from his background, privileged background back east, could be associated with. And I think it speaks to the kind of man he was, that we were good friends. And we went 3 summers. We went to Greece on his family vacation with him and Barbara and his grandkids and kids. And and I've told him many times, I said, it speaks a lot to you that, he was never above anybody. And one of the neat stories, he took me to Pine Valley, New Jersey, to the #1 golf course in the country. So we spent the night there and had the Secret Service and everything. The next morning we were at breakfast and had 2 other partners with us, friends of his. And a lady came over, an elderly African-American lady came over to wait on us that day, serve us. And we were talking about our golf game and we were really into our conversation. He stopped everything and turned his attention to her. And at first he said, ma'am, how are you doing today? And he said, so we appreciate so much you coming over here to serve us. And I know she probably had to be a little bit anxious about coming over there to the former president. She knew who he was, but he made her feel at ease right off the bat. He directed his attention to her. And at one point he said, do you have a son or grandkids that like golf, that would like a golf ball? She said, oh yeah, I've got one grandson that like. And so he pulls out a golf ball and autographs it and gave it to her for her grandson.
Wow.
And wherever that lady is today, she remembers George H.W. Bush and how he made her feel that day.
That's amazing. I know you have that same kind of impact on everybody else. Is there a picture there that you have handy that might be something everybody would like to see?
Oh, I got some old friends of mine here that these are old coaching buddies that anybody from Texas will recognize. That's Darrell Rawl, the legendary Texas coach, Emmer Ballard, that coached at Texas, coached at Angelo High School, David McWilliams, that played at Texas and coached at Texas, and Spike Dykes.
Hey, wow.
Picture. Spike worked for Emory and Spike worked for Darrell. David played at Texas for Darrell. I worked for Emory and Emory worked for Darrell. So we're all kind of tied in there coaching. We were friends. We were all friends. And I really appreciate those guys. Those were all good guys and people that I spent time with and respected. When we played each other, when we coached against each other, we tried to beat each other. But when that was over, David and I would go fishing. I went over there one time at Lake Austin, Lake Travis, and went fishing with David and played golf with Darrell out at Barton Creek. Went all over with Spike, did a lot of things with Spike, and of course worked for Emory, and I have great respect for him. And he changed my life. I was at Kansas State, and he got the A&M job, and I got up at 3:30 in the morning. I'd gone home for Christmas in Orange, and I'd heard Emory was getting the A&M job. So I sat on the front steps there at G. Riley White. His assistant came in at about 7 o'clock and was opening the door. And she said, "Can I help you?" And I said, "Yeah, I'm here to see Coach Ballard." And she says, "Is he expecting you today?" And I said, "No, not really." But she said, "Well, today's not a good day. He's got press coming in. He's got coaches interviewing." I said, I know that, but I've driven 3.5 hours to come up here. If I can just say hello to him, just for a minute." So she kind of shrugged her shoulders, said, "Okay, come on in. You can sit here." So I went in and stayed all morning. One of the ladies there did bring me some coffee, about mid-morning. So at lunch, they told me a place I could go to lunch. And I said, no, that's okay. I'm fine. So about 1:30, she came out and says, look, Coach Ballard knows you've been sitting here all day. If you want to wait till 4 o'clock, he's got a little small window there. He'd see you. And I said, that'd be great. So I went at 4 o'clock and started talking to him, telling him all the reasons why he should hire me at A&M. And so he said, and he was puffing on his pipe. Right then he's smoking, and I'd get 3 or 4 smoke signals, and I didn't know what they meant. So I just kept talking. He said, I'll tell you what I'll do. I got a lot of people I'm talking to. I'll let you know before Christmas what I'm going to do. So Christmas Eve, 1971,
Wow.
he called me and offered me a job.
And you were the receivers coach, right? So
yeah, I started off as receiver coach. I'd been in Kansas State. We had a quarterback named Lynn Dickey, who was a heck of a player. Mike Montgomery, who later played with the Cowboys. He lives in the Dallas area now. I keep up with Mike. Anyway, we were throwing the ball around, and I'd played. Something I'm proud of at the time. I left McNeese. I had all the receiving records, season records, career records for receiving. So I saw myself. I started off as a wide receiver and then moved into a tight end as I got bigger. And so I kind of, that was my background. And I'd worked on offense primarily at Kansas State, and then was a head freshman coach one year. So
the thing that's really, the thing that's interesting to me is that you were a receivers coach for him, and I guess 1972. And, he is the mastermind behind the Wishbone. So he doesn't want to throw the ball. So how did that dynamic work for you?
That's what happened. It was a great education for me, because at that time and a few years later, 8 of the Southwest Conference teams were running the Wishbone. So it was a great education for me to know the ins and outs of the Wishbone on offense. But at the end of that year, we had a coach leave on defense, and I went in. Melvin Robertson, who lives in the Dallas area now, is 94 years old, still sharp as a tack. But Melvin and I had developed a friendship, and he wanted me, rather than go hire somebody else, he wanted me to move over to defense. So I went into Emory, and it was an awkward situation for me because I worked directly. I spent meetings with him every day, and to go in and say, I want to move over. So he said, why do you want to move? And I said, well, I'm ambitious about my career. And the reality is, if somebody's really looking for a receiver coach, they're probably not going to come to a Wishbone team. There are guys around that, and so he moved me over, right? Melvin championed my cause, and I moved over. And it's the best thing ever happened, because Melvin Robertson, to this day, is probably the best coach I ever worked with or worked for or whatever. He was a brilliant coach. And we led in 72 and 74. We were number 2 in the nation in defense. 75, we were the number 1 defense in college football. 76, wow. We were number 3. So we spoke at the national convention, was at the Diplomat Hotel in Washington, D.C. And as a young defensive coach, I spoke at the National Coaches Convention on defense. And so that was a great thing. And I tell young people, as a young person, don't worry so much about where you can go make a lot of money. Go somewhere where you can learn from someone. Go to a good company that knows what they're doing. Go work for a good person that knows what they're doing, and learn from them. And if you do a good job, the money will come sooner or later. Now, in my case, it didn't come like it is now. It didn't come like that, but it came better from what I started off as, for sure.
Yeah. What do you think about what the coaches are making these days? I mean, it's pretty outrageous. And a lot of them haven't proved any long-term winning, like someone like you did, for so many years.
I'm happy for them. And I people hear those salaries and think of those as coaches' salaries. And there are a few guys that are really, really making a lot of money to me. I never made $1 million as a coach. And now there's assistants and defensive coordinators making, $2.5 million as assistant coach. And there are just a handful of high school coaches that make good salaries, but most coaches labor in obscurity and financially are not very well rewarded. They do it because they love kids and love the game. And I have so much respect for them. I spent 2 years in high school myself, taught 3 world histories, 2 civics, and coached football. And I know the hours that they put in. And when I think of coaches, I think of all those guys and how hard they work and the impact that they make. Many of the kids that they coach, or quite a few of them, have never had a dad, never had a father figure, never had someone say, son, you can't do that. That's not good for you. And you need to do this, or you can't treat ladies like this. You can't treat girls. They never had anybody to do that in their life. And those coaches really are so valuable to our society. So I applaud coaches. I'm happy for the ones that are making a lot of money, but I hope that in the process of making a lot of money, and I hope with young coaches, I never went into coaching for money. And Spike Dykes didn't, and Darrell Royal didn't, and Eddie Billard didn't. None of them ever said, man, I'm going to be a coach so I can make a lot of money. That's not why they coached. They coached because their coaches had such an impact on their lives. And they said, I said to myself, if I could have that same kind of impact on another year, that'd be a really a meaningful way to have to be employed and to have a career. And my coaches, no one in my family had ever been to college, and through the coaches polishing on me, and in terms of football, but in just terms of life too.
Yeah, and
enabled me to get a scholarship and be the first in my family, and then my 2 brothers followed me, and now all the kids are college graduates, and then the whole family was elevated. And I've seen that same thing. I've gone into inner city Dallas and Houston, and I've seen young men go in there and see their families, which in some cases it may have been an African American home, but it was very close to me. Good people, hardworking people, honest people. They just were uneducated, and that's why they were living where they were. And the kids, I said, hey, you know, you can take this thing to another level, and it's so rewarding for me to be able to see those young men who have done that.
Yeah, and I always looked at your teams and the guys that played for you. They were a special kind of person. And I don't know how you did this in recruiting, but I think Dat Wynn is a great example. Just great citizens, great on and off the field. And I almost felt like when you recruited, you and your coaching staff would get in a room and go, all right, that's an Aggie, that's not an Aggie. How much of an effort did you make to get those great guys like a Dat Wynn, who went on to win the Lombardi Trophy? And is an unbelievable human being. I mean, to this day, I still see him, at kids' basketball games and stuff like that. How did you do that in the recruiting game to find those kind of kids that really had the integrity that you have?
I told our coaches I was very much involved in the recruiting, and I said, I want 3 things. And every home I went into, and I went into every home of the guys were taking, I wanted to see how they treated their mother, what kind of home. So I know what I'm going to be responsible for this guy for the next 4 or 5 years, maybe 3 years. In the case of Sam Adams, or some real special, but most of them 4 or 5 years, I was going to be held responsible for what they did on and off the field. And I want to know what I was doing. So I go in the home and I told every family, and the young man was there. I said, I got 3 things important. Number 1, I want you to be a good person. And if I didn't think you were a good person, I wouldn't be here. And I pledged to the mother and dad, I will do my best to try to keep him going the way you've got him going. Number 2, I want him to be smart enough to understand how important a college education is. I'm not saying he has to like school, but he has to be smart enough to understand why he has to do it. And number 3, I want him to be burning up with being a good football player. And I promise to you, I'll keep them in that order. And I tried to do that. Saying, hey, you can go out and you can get a bunch of talented guys, and this guy can run fast, do all that. But if he's not a good person, it's going to be hard to build a team with guys that aren't good people. And if you get enough good people involved, probably good things are going to happen.
So well said. So well said. A good friend of mine, Richard Oliver, who wrote and was a great columnist for the San Antonio Express News for decades.
I know Richard.
Richard had a great line about you. He said, at the time that you took over the program, and he's an Aggie as well, by the way, but when you took over the program, he said you were the perfect fit, the perfect guy for the perfect time. How are you able to build that winning culture with so much integrity in the late 80s?
You know, at that time, all across the landscape of college football, particularly in the Southwest Conference, there was a lot, a lot of stuff flying around. They had NIL way before NIL came along. But anyway, when I took over and the coaches I hired, I told them, and I said, I'll put it in your contract that if you go out and break the rules, violate the rules, and I'll fire you and I'll haunt you. Because I said, we're going to do it the right. And I had people say, hey, if you don't cheat, you're not going to win. I said, we're going to find out. But we're going to do things the right. I'm not going to teach a bunch of kids how to break the rules. And so we tried to stay true to that. And that's the most meaningful thing. I get called like that wind during my sickness. That wind called me at least once a week, and to see how I was doing and all that. And every one of those calls, at the end of the call, he said, "Coach, is it okay if I say a prayer for you?" And I said, "Yeah, I'd appreciate that." And so we'd hang up with Dad praying for me on the phone that I would get through that illness. And I had just a whole bunch of people that those players would call me on a regular basis, inner city guys, some of them that never had father figures or anything, just call and say, "I love you, Coach. I love you." And I'd say, "I love you too." So those kinds of things is how we built our program. We were all, and I'd start the first meeting every year. I said, we're all from different backgrounds. We got guys here who lived in pretty nice homes and come from pretty uh, uh, good background. We had other guys here, and we got black guys, we got white guys, we got Vietnamese guys. Samisi Hamuli was a time. I've got a picture. One of them, I can't show it to you, but it's on the wall here. One of my favorite ones. In '98, we won the Big 12 championship. And so they came in the locker room after the game and had a big bowl, big glass bowl with the championship trophy. And they gave it to me. And I said, I got all the guys in there. And I said, hey, I want you to all get in here and everybody hold this thing up. Don't drop it, but hold it up there. So I got all those hands. And so I said, now I want you to look up at these hands. We got some white hands in there. We got some black hands. We got some black hands that aren't really black. Toya, I'm talking about you. We got some Vietnamese hands. Dad, I'm talking about you. We got some Tongan hands. Samisi, I'm talking about. I said, this is what happens when you get all those hands to work together. So I was in New York, I think it was 2 years ago, and I did a thing. ESPN was doing a thing on the 150-year anniversary of college football. So they were interviewing some people. I was up there for the Hall of Fame dinner. And in that interview, they said, well, what are some special moments for you? I said, well, one of them was in '98. We won the championship, which was fun. But to me, after that, when they brought the trophy in, I told them the story of getting all those hands. I said, that's what we need in this country right now. We need more of that. We're all in this thing together. We're all on the same team. And the black hands, the white hands, the Mexican hands, the whatever kind of hand, Vietnamese, Chinese, in this country, it's our country, it's our team, and we all need to find a way to work together and get the differences, talk them out, work through them, do whatever. But anyway, they said, can we use that? Can we get that picture? So I sent them a copy, and 2 Thanksgivings ago, they ran that over that weekend for the history of college football. They ran that picture and my interview and said, that's what we need. We're all the same team, and the team won't work as long as we say, well, what's in it for me? What are you doing for me? No, it's not about that. It's what can we all do to make this place better?
Recently, you talked about it. You went through a battle with cancer. You beat it. I mean, you beat everybody else. Why not cancer? And I know there was such a tremendous support from the Aggie community and all your former players, their love and their prayers. I know you felt that. How much did that mean to you to go through that and have that kind of support? And what was that whole process like for you?
It was a terrible thing to find out that you got a very serious cancer that was fairly advanced when they discovered it. And you say, hey, you got to go forward, take the next play. And I did. I had very, very good doctors and went down to MD Anderson. And I had some people here at Baylor Scott and White that I was working with, both of them. And then the support the prayers, the support. Every day I'd get calls from guys. Gary Gibbs, a former OU coach, called me, and Dad was calling me, and just coaches and players from all over the country and people. I had the ladies, and I've never been there, but the ladies at the First Baptist Church in Poteet, Texas. One day, a package showed up on the front door, and it was a quilt that they had made. And they have a little ministry they have, and they made this beautiful quilt that had a big cross in the middle and had the little patches throughout the quilt, and each patch had a little bow on it, and each of those bows signified a lady in that church who had prayed for me the day they were making that quilt. So every day my golfing buddies would come by when I live on the 17th hole. When they get on 16, they'd text me and say, we're coming by. So I'd go out on the back porch, and it wasn't easy just to go on the back porch. And they'd be out there playing, and I'd say, man, if I could be out there with you guys today, sunny day, pretty day, and my friends playing golf, I wouldn't worry near as much about making double bogey as I have in the past. And they laugh. So now I'm back out there. So they remind me of that now when I make double bogey, which is fairly frequent. But anyway, you get through these things, we all do, and it's given me a greater appreciation just how much it means when you take the time to call someone or send them a note, text them, tell them you're thinking about them, hang in there. And so through my faith and the doctors I had, I've been last January, April, August, and this January I was diagnosed as being cancer free. And so the last time I went was in December this past year, and the doctor, I've been going every 4 months, and he said, let's make it 6 months. So I go back in June, and he said, if you're okay, then we'll stretch it to a year. So
nice.
I gained all my weight back. I actually lost down to my high school playing weight. I lost 30 pounds. And so now I've actually overshot my number coming back. So I'm trying now to maybe intentionally lose 2 or 3 more pounds here.
Well, you look fantastic, and I know you're pushing 80, and I know a lot of your former players tell me you're sharp as a whistle. What is the secret? How do you pull that off? I mean, you seem like you're still in your 20s mentally.
I'm 78. I'll be 79 in November. I've never smoked. I tried to manage, I stayed active. I've stayed active, getting exercise, and tried to stay mentally active, of interacting with people and play. I hear from a player. I talked to Bucky yesterday. So I talked to my guys all the time, and I've got a good support group here that I play golf with, and got a wonderful wife and kids. And so I think, and I tell people, I really believe, and I've been blessed to be able to call some people who are going through, they're at a different stage than I was, but they're going through what I was going through. And I've told them that I think your attitude really has a lot to do with your chance to get through something, any kind of, whatever the problem is that you're facing, your attitude toward dealing with it and being positive and staying positive and not giving up. That it's just like playing football to me. I mean, we're the Big 12 championship in '98. We were down 14 at halftime, maybe 15 at halftime. But we were at halftime. Say, hey guys, they've had all the breaks. We can go out in the second half. So we went on. We got it into overtime and then double overtime. Then we won it. So if you just hang in there, keep playing, play the next play, then you got a chance.
It's so beautiful. So great to hear that. Well, RC, I look at it, you've won more games than any other coach in Texas A&M history. You never had a losing season, 4 conference championships, 3 perfect seasons back in the Southwest Conference. As you look at Aggie football today, no one has been able to really match your success. Where do you think the Aggies are right now in the football program?
That's a good question, and I'm not sure how to answer. I think we've made great strides. Number one, we're in the toughest conference in college football, in my opinion, and we've made great stride. I can remember, and during the time that I was coaching, we were way behind in terms of our facilities, our resources. And I kept at that time trying to say, man, we got to do something. We're falling way behind in terms of what you show recruits. And I've told people that there are two things happen when you bring a young man and his family to your campus. And if you don't have facilities like the last place he visited, he can assume one of two things. Number one, that you would like to have the kind of facilities those other people have, but you just can't afford it. And the second thing, he can say, well, they can afford it. It's just not important to them. And either one of those, if you're a recruit and his family, those are both bad deals. And we were in that situation where our facilities were not comparable to the people that we were playing against. And I think it's a great credit to the A&M people that they've stepped up, and really amazing what we're paying coaches and what we're doing facility wise. And so I'm very positive about A&M and about the football program. We will be good. I'm hoping it's just next fall. But in terms of what our capabilities are, we've come a long way in terms of being able to be competitive. When a young man comes in there and he looks at our facilities, we've got really good facilities, and we're not sitting on them. We're actually doing more things right now. We've got a beautiful stadium. We'll put over 100,000 in that stadium for most games. And so we got it all going. We just need to win more games. And we had some close losses this past year. I think Coach Fisher is making some changes on his staff, and hopefully those changes will make a difference in some of those close losses. There'll be close wins or blowout wins, but you don't have many blowout wins in the SEC.
Yeah, and with that, your thoughts about where college football is right now, with all the musical chairs, with the conferences and teams switching. Eventually, Texas and OU are going to be in the SEC. So we got the Aggies and Longhorns against each other. What do you think about all the changes with all the conferences, as far as all the tradition that it affects that you're so used to?
I think it's an adjustment for all football fans, and it's been going on for a long time. I love the old Southwest Conference. I grew up in Texas. I followed it, and it was so much fun to coach in that league. But if you were paying attention, the demise of it was inevitable because, and it's where I lie, like a whole lot of people, when I was very young, not everybody even had a television. And if you had one, you probably got two or three stations is all that you got. And I grew up watching the Southwest Conference game of the week or whatever. And so television was not as big a factor. It was a coming factor. And then about the time in the early 80s when the emergence of ESPN, when Oklahoma and Georgia sued the NCAA, saying that they should, up to that time, the NCAA pretty much decided who was going to be on television. And there were a lot of teams that never got on there. And some of the name teams were always on there. And that meant money for them and no money for the other, very little money for the rest of them. So when Georgia and OU won that suit, saying that they own their television rights. And so then if that's understood, then everybody else owns theirs too. And that being the case, then those schools could collectively take their rights and go to an ABC or CBS, and so what would you pay if you had all the Southeastern Conference schools, or what would you pay for all the Big Ten schools? And so the money just took off in a huge direction, and that's continued to go. And so the money that is involved has evolved. And I think what happened, probably a natural argument or natural evolution, is with all the money. And then so coaches started making more and more and more money, and some of them like big numbers. And there were those that sat back and said, it's kind of interesting. That coach is making all that money, and those kids are not really benefiting from that. Well, part of that argument is not accurate because the kids were greatly benefiting from it. The kids were getting, and I know from experience what my college education, how it changed my life and my family's life going forward. And I've seen that happen over the years. So I spoke up I was at a dinner in California last summer. Some guy alluded to the fact that these players have been taken advantage of all these. And I said, oh, wait, let's talk about that. We have provided great educations for these young men. We've provided great facilities. We've hired strength coaches. We've hired trainers, team doctors. We've had study halls. We've hired tutors. We've done, a whole lot of things to help them. Some of them, in all honesty, were not really equipped coming out of high school to go to an A&M or a Texas or OU or whatever. And so they weren't physically. We had to have strength coaches and people to work with them, and then academically, you had to have tutors and people to work with them. And so we have spent a whole lot of money doing that. We do it for basketball and baseball and track and all the women's sports. So it's not accurate to say that we've taken advantage of those kids. We've provided something really valuable. And it worries me that right now in today's discussions that you hear on TV and you read about, there's not a whole lot of talk about academics and about education. It's about and here and going here and how long you have to stay and when you can come out and how long in the portal. You hear all that, but you don't hear, let's talk about the educational aspects. And
you never hear student athletes anymore. It used to be always student athletes when we talked about kids.
Yeah. So that concept, it worries me, and I'm speaking to my age, but as I said, coaches in my generation didn't go into coaching to make a lot of money, and a lot of them actually left coaching. They'd be coaching and they just say, I can't feed my family for what I'm making. And they went outside of coaching and got a job in private industry. And I knew some of those guys that did really well because the qualities they had of getting up early, staying late, working hard, doing all that. If you do that in just about any other industry, you got a chance to be successful and make more money. So you had that. And then the kids, I was so proud and my family was so proud. They couldn't believe it. They would actually pay for my school, to go to school and get a college education. And so we've moved beyond that now. And I think one thing that triggered some of it, I'd have to say, is that the huge salaries that coaches have made, and then it's a natural thing. I'm saying, well, what about the players? How they benefited? So now we've moved to that era. I hope it all works. I'm pleased. I tell people that I'm glad in this era, if this is where the game's going. I'm so glad A&M is a player in it. A&M's in the middle of it. We'll step up and do whatever we need to do to be good. We'll do it. And
what about the NIL in these high school kids that are making $1 million before they even play college football? What do you think about it? Do you think it's a bad way, for the business of college football to go and for the kids as well, because they're unproven and you don't even know, and they're throwing all that money at those kids to get them to go to a school.
You have to be careful. I mean, I have to be careful of my comments because I don't want to sound like I'm against the kids or against their families or against the game. I would say that over the years watching, and it's something I spent a lot of time with, watching guys come out of college after having 2 or 3 years that you tried to educate. I've seen a lot of them make some bad decisions when they step out of college. And all of a sudden they said, man, I got all this money and they're buying houses and cars and, and next thing you know, I think the average career was like 2 or 3 years. Some guys had, 8 or 10 years, which is a really long career. But even with a 10-year career, you get out of college when you're 21, now you're 31. What are you going to do the rest of your life to take care of your family and your kids and pay for college and all of that? And some of them, quite a number of them didn't. It was hard to get that concept. First of all, it was always funny to me when they get out and start making that money. They said, Coach, you wouldn't believe how much taxes they take out of my check, man. I said, no, I believe it. That's the way it works.
Yeah, a
And
lot of hands going in there.
yeah, a lot
State,
of hands,
national.
so
You better
they
not
take the
travel.
taxes. Then everybody says, man, what about this, that? And a lot of them were really good natured guys. So they would go help this person, that person, this, and next thing you know, they're 25 years old with no skills other than football, and they've been cut. They can't play football anymore. So now what are they going to do? And that's where you go back. Fortunately, the emphasis on education of saying, hey, you can go out, you've got the life skills to hold down a job, and you've got some training. At least you can go in and be a good employee, and people will, because of your character, then they will train you how to do something. But if the character part of it is not emphasized, and you get guys, and so I say all that to say now, back up 4 years earlier than that, and I'm 17 and a half or 18, and now I've got $1 million. I've never had a job. I've never had a job. I played football, and the good Lord gave me a lot of talent, but I don't know anything about working or managing money. And really, in the cases of my family coming up, they wouldn't have known how to manage $1 million either. It'd have probably made us all sorry. I don't know, and there's a whole new deal. And to be honest, those kids are going to have a lot of, and the schools, I hope, will embrace that and will provide education for those kids on what the realities of handling that kind of money. And then the other thing is in the locker room, how you manage what this guy, do they all get the same, which I don't think is the case. This guy gets this and that, and then, in pro football, that's part of that. They have a salary cap. And right now, as I understand the rule, there is no salary cap for
Yeah.
teams. So you've got the NFL model in a way, but without, you don't have salary cap. And the NFL, when you go into free agency, there's some very definite rules regarding of when you say, hey, you know what, I don't want to play here anymore. Then there's a process you go through to go play somewhere else. And if
Yes.
you get to the point you say, you're not paying me enough, then it's okay. If you want to ride this next year or two of your contract out and become a free agent, and then there are rules. Even if you become a free agent, then the team that has your rights at that time, they can match the offer. Well, there's a lot of stuff, and right now I don't think we have all that worked out. And so hopefully they will. We've got good people in college athletics, and hopefully they'll get that worked out. And
You've had such a great relationship with the Texas high school coaches. When you look at these great coaches around the Lone Star State, what do you think separates them from some of the other coaches in different states around America?
football has always been a huge deal in Texas, and the Texas High School Coaches Association, that convention every year, they have a huge convention in summer and have done it for years. My my high school coach was a great coach named Ted Jeffries, and he was at the first meeting of the Texas High School Coaches Association. And the thing I remember about him, I don't remember a whole lot about the football, but I remember Coach Jeffries as a man. And I remember how he treated us and the lessons he passed on. This week, I did a documentary on Phillips, on Bum Phillips and Wade Phillips. And Bum is from Orange, and Bum played at Lamar Junior College for Coach Jeffries. And then Coach Jeffries got the head coaching job at Stephen F. Austin University. And Bum went up there and played. And I saw in Bum Phillips his style of coaching. I saw a lot of what I saw, the way I was treated. And I had great coaches, junior high, high school, and college. I never had anybody grabbing me and shaking me and cursing me. I never had that. I thought all coaches were like that, but when I got out and started going around, they're not all like that. But we have some really knowledgeable guys in Texas. I think it's a great testimony to the quality as the coach at Texas Tech, to jump right up and do the great job he did this past year and coaching them out there. And there have been other guys. The picture I talked about, like Emery Ballard was a head coach at Angelo High School. Spike was a longtime head coach. And there have been so many of those guys that evolved up through the high school ranks. The quality of the football, where I mentioned Melvin Robertson, was a longtime high school coach. And then he went to University of Houston with Bill Yeoman, and he was one of the premier defensive coordinators. I can say one of the best I was ever around. But he moved up through the ranks, and there have been a lot of guys over the years that have done that in the state of Texas and in other states.
I've always thought of you as a guy that's made for TV. You've done amazing things in your life. What did you think about the experience of working with me and doing Big 12 Live on Fox Sports Southwest and being in the studio? What did you think about that whole thing? Because I remember the old Oklahoma State coach, Pat Jones. He seemed to like the makeup a little bit more than you did.
Well, it was hard to. I enjoyed. Gave me a way to be involved in football, and I enjoyed being around the guys like the people that work. Not so much the producer kind of guys that that we got to do this, we got to do that, we got to say this, say that, and everything. And that's pretty much you haven't told me what to say today. We've just been talking. You kind of led me a little bit into some of these things, but I've been able to express my opinion. So I got to the point early on where I had to say, do I want to try to move in this profession and become one of those guys that does this down the road for a living? And part of that requirement, as I understand it, and as I've observed, is you have to be ready to be critical of the coaches and even second guess them, if you will, to go into things where I'm saying, here's what he should have done. This is what, and I've been that guy. I've been the guy where they say, so I was very reluctant. I had spent my career trying to be respected as a coach and by coaches. I'm saying, that guy's a good guy. That guy's an honest guy. That guy knows what he's doing. And that respect meant more to me than being a name. I didn't want to go in there and try to spend a career where the other people on TV said, boy, he's a great guy on game. He's a great announcer. I didn't have long enough, and that didn't mean enough to me. I didn't want to move through that deal. My deal was in coaching, that I wanted to be respected by my players and by other coaches. And I think I have that. I'm very proud. I'm in the College Football Hall of Fame. I got and that means a lot to me. There's only been like a couple of hundred guys in the history of the game that have gotten that recognition. And there are requirements. You got to have been a head coach for at least 10 years. You got to won at least 60% of your games. And then the reality is there's some character things involved that people just don't vote for you if you don't have some of those other things, And so I'm proud of that, and I'm at peace with my career. I had a fun career, and I've got a lot of stuff, trophies and watches, all that. And that stuff has some meaning. I'd be lying if I said, but not nearly as much as my friends in coaching and the former players I've had. And I've got players that when I was there at Southern Cal, for short, Marcus Allen, I see from time to time and talk to him. I got Mike Montgomery, lives in the Dallas area, played for us at Kansas State when I was there. And I keep up with the coaches and players, and it's a very meaningful thing. I feel extremely blessed to have been able to do what I've done, and I got no complaints. And I kind of faced that when I first was diagnosed. It went through my mind, and this could be the end of this deal. But it's been a fun deal, and I've been so blessed. If it is the end, I've got no complaints. I don't have from where I started shining those shoes, and to get to have done all the fun things that I've done and meaningful things, and to have been involved with these players and other coaches, I'm good to go. So now I feel like I'm in overtime a little bit. I've been granted, we got it down to, I got it back tied up, so I've got a little more overtime to play with here, and I'm gonna make the best of that. Try to live every day, enjoy every day, and not worry about tomorrow. I'm gonna enjoy it today.
Well, I know in this overtime period, you're on a golf course, so I know you play golf, but you had that stretch where you were living on a ranch and trying to do the cowboy thing. What did you think of that whole thing? Because being a cowboy is really hard work.
Well, it's awesome. The hard work's probably what got me. I had cows and I had horses, but I was the cowboy. So I was having to put hay out and vaccinate calves, and all those births don't go just true to form when you're delivering those calves and hauling them to the sale and doing all that. But it was fun. I enjoyed it because it was part of Texas. One of the real fun things, a guy up in your area, Red Stegall, the Texas poet laureate or whatever, is a cowboy. And so I went on trail rides and slept in tents, 2-man tents. And we'd go out to the J Ranch out in Palo Duro Canyon, get up at 5 in the morning, go eat off the chuck wagon, ride out at daybreak in 25 degrees with 25-mile-an-hour winds, and go out and round up cows and go work them and cut the calves off and vaccinate them, all that. And it was just fun to. That's a hard life. Those old cowboys out there, they earned what little bit they made. They earned every penny of it. But it was fun. I love my horses, and so I still got the ranch. But I said, at my age, I don't need to be out, playing cowboy. I didn't have to do it, and I figured that if I was paying myself anything at all for my time, that I was going in the hole because you can't make a lot of money off of having 30 head of cattle, and at least I couldn't. I probably didn't know enough about it, but anyway, I made the decision, and it's been a good one. I'm happy with that. I still have the place, love going out there and taking my grandkids, and we have a lot of fun there.
You got to be careful with your neighbors too, because you're way out in the country. And when you're doing that kind of stuff, you got to kind of watch your back, don't you? Just a little bit.
Well, you do, because you don't always have a good cell signal, and you could have something. Well, one time I was out there and I was doing some riding. Fortunately, I was in a pen, but in this particular case, the horse got tired of riding before I did, so he threw me out of the pen. As I went over the fence, I grabbed the fence, and then as my body went over, I had these 4 knuckles came out on this side of my hand. And so I was conscious, and I got up and I called the team doctor. And I said, "Man, I got a problem." And I said, "I got these bones sticking out of my hand, and they're white, but my first thought when I did that, I got up, I was holding my hand, and said, "Oh God, I'll never be able to play golf again." That was the first thought I had. Second thought was, I better get a doctor and try to get it. So I've got my hand a little bit, the fingers are crooked, and but I can play golf with it. But I was so lucky. I mean, it was a pipe fence, and my head I didn't have a helmet or anything on. I had a cowboy hat. I could have hit the pipe fence, and a whole lot of things could have happened. So, and it really was my fault, probably. I probably wasn't experienced enough to handle the situation. But anyway,
That's
fun
awesome.
being a cowboy. I grew up. I've got when I was a little kid shining shoes, one of those barbershops, the guy that owned it, Mr. Martin, had a horse. And so he had let me ride that horse. He had saddled up and let me ride it. One day he said, "Shine, how would you like to go into Orange?" We were in Bridge City at the time. It was about 6 miles. He said, "How'd you like to go into Orange and ride that rodeo parade?" I said, "Oh, Mr. Martin, I love that." He said, "Well, we got to get you fixed up. We got to get your neckerchief and all that." So I got me a little, it was green, like a chartreuse green neckerchief. And it had a shirt with those little snap buttons on it. And I've got a picture of that. And I was in the 4th grade, I think. And there, all the years, whatever happened in sports, I've never had a prouder moment than going in there, riding down Main Street in Orange in the rodeo parade. And then that night, we go out to the Orange County Sheriff's Posse Rodeo Arena, and I rode in the grand opening, the grand entry in the rodeo, and me sitting up on that horse, So I was a cowboy at heart, I guess. But I've got great appreciation for the heritage here in Texas and the people here at A&M. We've had a lot of people in that industry, and we've made a mark. I mean, we're in terms of agriculture and farming and ranching and all that. We're as good as anybody anywhere.
Yeah, you look at all the amazing people that have come out of that university and really changed our world, in that era and all that. But I think it's interesting too that I look at your legacy at Texas A&M. There are so many things that really jump out at me. And one that really does is the fact that you developed this hostile environment at Kyle Field where opponents would come in there and they had no chance of winning. In your 14 years, there's only 12 teams that were able to leave there with a victory. How important was it to build that for all your success?
It was very important. Our 12th man, as we call the student body, which stands throughout the game. And I mean, we had kids. I had kids now, grown ups. I talked. They said, "Coach, the whole time I was there, I never saw y'all lose. At home they go to games, they never saw us lose." So I think in the decade of the '90s, we lost 4 times at home, something like that. And but that crowd, and I had coaches later tell me, said, "Man, it would maximize if the other team was having a little success, it would minimize that because the crowd was so pumped up for us. And then if the other team was having problems, it would just double those problems, because the crowd, I remember guys trying to get the snap off and the crowd was just so overwhelming. They couldn't snap. They couldn't hear. Nobody out there could hear what they were doing, and then we'd run back and sack the quarterback and it was just going downhill. So that was really fun. And I appreciate so much the support that we got there from the student body and from our fans in general, but in particular the student body and the way they support it. And that's still one of the things. It's fun to see right now. They're still doing it. It's still a great place to play.
Yeah, you have to work hard to be a great fan there. And I think about all the traditions. How do you keep up with all the traditions that Texas A&M has? Because it's definitely times 10. It's almost on steroids compared to all the other schools.
Over the years, it's so many of those things. I've learned a lot of them over the last 50 years to where you understand when I first came, and talk about elephant walk and whoop and all these things. What is all that? What is all that about? So over the years, I've gotten a lot of it down. I don't know if I've gotten it all down, but I've been so happy to be a part of this university. I've spoken over the years. We have that muster in the spring. This spring, I'm going to the Hysteria A&M Club in Reno, Nevada, Reno, Tahoe, that area up there. And over the years, I've been to Panama City, Panama, Mexico City, Washington, D.C., San Francisco, L.A., and several little towns in Texas, little small towns in Texas. And they've all been fun. I went out to Orange County A&M Club one time and spoke at their muster. And so it's just been fun to speak at and meet people in all those different places. I spoke out at out in Fredericksburg 2 years ago at muster and had everybody from around that county, and it just fun. It's fun, and that's what I said way early in the interview. To have a place where you have roots. I see a lot of my NFL friends. They bounce around. They're 2 years in San Diego. They go to here, to here, to here, to here, and then when it comes time to light, they don't have a good place to light. They've been to so many places, and as a young coach, I saw Coach Royal at Texas and Frank Broyles at Arkansas and Bo at Michigan and Woody at Ohio State and Vince Dooley at Georgia, and all of those had an identity. They pretty much all coached at some other places, but they found a good place, and so when you think of Georgia, you think of Vince Dooley. You think of Darrell, you pretty much think you think of Texas, you think of Darrell, and so that always made an impression on me, and so I'm happy to in some cases to be identified with A&M, and this is I make no bones about it. I got a A&M Letterman ring that I wear, and proud to be here. It's where I chose to be. I didn't have to stay here, but I wanted to stay here, and it brings so much joy into my life. I got all kind of grandkids now. This fall there'll be 4 Slocums in A&M as students as
Wow.
well. And I've got a granddaughter be there. I've got a grandson there. I've got a nephew and a niece that'll be there.
What do you think will be your biggest legacy when those kids walk around campus, and maybe some people, in the future that don't really know the Slocum name, but they see all the statues, they see all the information. What do you think is your biggest legacy there?
I would hope that I'd be seen as someone that represented A&M in a positive way, someone that treated other people, the people that I have met, treated them with respect, and the players I had tried to be a positive person in their lives, tried to influence their lives, and stayed true to A&M and A&M values, and just there's a deal, I think in a good book that a good name is more precious than gold. And so you'd like to have a good name, especially, and when you get to be my age, that's really all that matters. I mean, you can, whatever money you have, it's going to be gone, but your name and your reputation as a person, that's going to go, that's going to be around after you're gone. And so to me, that's the single most important thing to me.
RC, thank you so much for doing this. Such a pleasure to talk to you. A big thanks to your wife. I know she's your tech support. Mine is as well.
Yeah.
Man, hope to see you on the golf course in the future.
All right.
Thanks so
Good
much for
deal.
doing this.
I've given up on being good, but I haven't given up on being better. So my goal when I go out there is to be better. If I can be just a little better, and so I'm still working on it. Have a good day. Good
luck on that, because it seems to me like the more you practice, the worse you get. It's just one of those sports.
That might be true. That may be true. Don't tell my players that.
Thanks, RC.
All right. See you, Rick.